Hello, everyone. Welcome back to what is undisputedly the best aquarium podcast on the internet. I'll say it to your face, and I'm not afraid of you. So it's what I believe. It's what my co-host believes. Whether it's true or not, we really don't know. But welcome back to the Tank Talk podcast. Here with the Professor Jason. Jason, I've got a unique topic. 2 weeks in a row, we've done my ideas, which I feel like this is my podcast now. Are you ready to talk about where we should spend money and where we should not?
Absolutely, and I think it's going to be interesting. I would be willing to bet we're probably going to be in agreement on most things in terms of when you're setting up an aquarium, where should you not be skimping on, and where can you be like, you know what, the bargain stuff is probably just fine.
Yeah, and I've been asked this question many times. I'm sure you have too. It's like, okay, I have this certain budget. How much of my budget should I commit to this, and how much should I commit to that? And I've always felt the same way about this topic, and I agree. I think we are going to probably look at it very similarly, but who knows? It might be different. The thing is, there's really no wrong answer here. It's just our personal preferences. But what we're talking about here is starting up that aquarium from scratch. Doesn't matter if it's your first or your 15th. You have a budget. Where should you be allocating the most funds to, and which ones can you go to the bargain bin on? I broke it down into 7. Yes, Jason, 7 different things that we need, that every aquarium's going to need. Those are, I was about to say them in my order. I got to mix it up here. You're going to need a stand. You're going to need the aquarium. You're going to need lights, decorations, a heater, a filter, and kind of important, the fish. There's 7 things there. I can't get all my fingers on camera. 7 different things that we're going to break down. Do you think we ought to start at what you can skimp on first, or do you think we should start with what you should spend the most money on first?
That's completely up to you. In my mind, I was thinking working from the bottom up and then going into the aquarium, but we can also just take it from your perspective too, of here's the cheap stuff, here's the expensive stuff.
When you say the bottom up, you mean like start with the stand and then go to the aquarium?
Oh yeah, go tank, stand, and then let's work our way in with the equipment, and then the stuff that's going in the tank, the decorations, and the fish.
Okay.
I am open to however you would like to do it.
Yeah, well, it's my show here today. Last week was your show, and next week will be your show. This one's mine. No, I don't think there's a wrong way to do it, but I like your idea. Let's start from the bottom. Let's talk about the stand. Everything is going to be sitting on this stand. We can make our case for it, and then I will tell you where I put it in the order of this list, because I did rank them 1 all the way down to 7. The stand obviously is very important, but there's a lot of ways you can do it. You can DIY a stand. I don't even know if I'm going to be able to move out of the way enough for you to be able to see. You can buy a custom made stand like this, which is a piece of furniture, basically a piece of fine furniture. Obviously that's going to take up quite a bit of your budget. You can buy some 2x4s and build a DIY stand. Or depending on the aquarium size, I would say if you're at like maybe 20 gallons or smaller, you can put it on an already existing piece of furniture, something like a dresser or a desk or something like that. So there's a lot of ways to do it. And because of that, I didn't put it as where you need to spend the most money, but what are your feelings about, I'll give you my ranking when we're going to move on to the next one, but what are your feelings about the importance of a stand?
So I agree with you. You got a lot of options there. And I absolutely agree. 20 gallons or less, it's not even in my budget because I'm using a nice sturdy dresser, and again, key word here is sturdy. Keeping in mind a 20 gallons is going to be about 200 pounds. So if you're a 200-pound human being and you feel comfortable sitting on your desk all the time, Okay, well, maybe that is a sturdy piece of furniture. So in that respect, it's going to be no money. And so you can ultra skimp there. The minute you start going 20 gallons or above, so 29 gallon up to maybe like a 40 or a 55, can you do comfortably sleep at night sort of thing? Buy a stand from a big box store where at that point you're still on the cheaper side. Yes, but again, it's just your comfort level. Now, for me personally, I'm still, when it comes to stands, spending almost no money because I build all my own stands. And so, with the exception of the 275 gallons that are on either side of me that you can't see if you're watching this on YouTube, every other stand I have in my fish room and in the gallery I built, which means I didn't spend a ton of money, painted them all black. They blend in very nicely, and they are 400 million times stronger than any stand you're going to buy at a pet store. My personal feeling is as you get into the larger tanks, if you want to buy a stand, you're going to spend a ton of money. There is no way around it. If you want anything that looks halfway decent, you will spend more money on the stand by far than you will on the tank. So if you're buying a
Facts.
6 foot tank, good luck because you might be $1,500, $2,000 easily into that stand. That's going to be sturdy, right? Not one that you're buying from a big box store. Be like, is this particle board? If this thing gets wet, is it going to fall apart on me? So it can literally be all over the place. I would say this is the one area where you can go anywhere from free to many thousands of dollars, depending on the size of the tank and how much you want to do.
Yeah, I'm sitting here looking around my fish room, and I will say everything 240 gallons and up I have on professionally made stands. Now, I have an arrangement with custom aquariums. I promote for them. They come as kind of part of the package. But I do have that. I also have, I'm looking at 4 of the cheaper big box store stands. They've been perfectly fine. I agree. You got to take care of them. You got to be careful when you have to move them. They are built to hold those stands or those aquariums. But even those, they're not the most high end thing. They are made out of particle board. They're kind of that IKEA level is what a lot of people would say. They're not made out of super sturdy materials, but they are designed to hold that size aquarium. The money is well spent there, even though, don't get them wet. And when you're dealing with an aquarium, it's kind of hard not to. But what I refuse to do is, I shouldn't say that. That sounds kind of harsh, but I can't put this at the bottom of the list as far as the least important, because some people will get lucky and have that scenario where they don't have to spend any money on it because they have a rack that they ordered off a Uline that one time or whatever. They have something that they can put the aquarium on. For them, yeah, you're not spending anything. It's at the bottom of the list. But assuming that everybody's going to need a stand, I put it at number 4 as far as the importance, which is quite literally the center of the list. It's not the most important to make sure you spend the most money on, but there's certainly things that you can cheap out on that are less important than the stand. But where would it stand on your list?
I would say it's probably right there, mid range. It's not so much about the cost; it's about the quality. And you can do, like, if you are handy and you can build your own stand, you can get the highest quality possible stand, the sturdiest stand if you know what you're doing, of course, and spend very little money. And of course, again, 20 gallons and below, you might not have to spend any money at all. So this one's a little bit tough, but yeah, I would say right around that mid 4 or 5 ish when it comes to spending money, only because you've got some really cost saving potential options there. Even if, like you said, it's an industrial rack, cinder blocks. I mean, they cost almost nothing, and they're going to absolutely hold that tank. So it just depends on what you want it to look like.
Yeah, I bought a dresser from IKEA that I put a 20-gallon aquarium on, and it's fine. I want to say it costs like $200, so it costs more than a manufactured stand for a 20-gallon would have. But I wanted it to look nice. But I will say, I think it cost me like $200. It is bowing a little bit. That top drawer is sticking a little bit on it. So, even if you do go with a piece of furniture, if it's not designed to hold that, you might get a little issues. It's not going to come crashing down or anything like that, at least not mine. But, I probably could have made a little bit better choice there. But, if you're somebody that is completely caught up on the appearance, if this is sitting on your living room, you ain't going to want 2x4s and screw holes and stuff like that in it. So a DIY, I agree, is you can park a truck on DIY stands if you build them right. But they're probably going to be the least attractive unless you trim them out and do the whole thing. Then you're spending some pretty good money. But middle of the pack there, and I don't think that's unreasonable. Now, how about let's go to the glass box? That's the next thing on the tier. Working our way up. Where are you at with the aquarium? This one might get a little bit of controversy. And listen, I demand that our list be different here. You can't be starting every single thing off by saying, I agree with you. No, let's disagree.
We might have a disagreement here because I would put it towards the bottom of the list. Everybody always asks me, where are your fish? Like I've got some sweet hookups from Uncle Rico or something like that. I don't. All of my aquariums came from the dollar per gallon sales, the Petcos, the PetSmarts. The Low Boys came from a local fish store. They're made by ZoomMed. There's only one company that I'm aware of that makes those. But everything else came from Petco or PetSmart that I can think of. And they have all held up just fine for many years. I had one leak, 175 gallon, have a slow leak, took it back to PetSmart within about 20 minutes. Like, here's your new tank. Yeah, it stunk, breaking that down, putting the new one in. But other than that, never had a single issue with any of these tanks. So when people ask me for the common sizes, 125 or even 150 and below, I'm like, I just get them the same place everybody else does. Petco, PetSmart, no problems. I'm not spending a lot of money. I'll take advantage of the dollar per gallon sales or now the 50% off sales. But it really is towards the lower end of my list.
Well, we have our first disagreement. This is not me saying that you're wrong. I agree. I mean, if you're going to buy a 10-gallon tank, come on. I mean, you can get those anywhere, and you really shouldn't be worried about it. However, there is a lot of stuff out there that is currently being sold on a website that we're going to be talking about in a couple of weeks. There's some trash out there. And this is a scenario where you have a glass box that's full of water. This is it's not number one on my list, but it's probably you don't want it to be a cheap piece of crap that's going to blow up because it's all over if that happens. So I actually put it at number 3. I put it above stand. As you were talking, I started to kind of rethink things, but I'm still going to stick with it. You made a good case, and I don't disagree with anything you said, except the only disagreement is mine's a different place on the list. And it's just because this is what's holding everything together. And if that fails, you got a big problem on your hands. And everybody's seen the video on YouTube of the couple sitting there in their living room and their tank blows up sitting there next to them. Somebody said that video was staged. I don't know who's dumb enough to stage something like that. That would be so dumb. But and we've all heard the nightmare stories of aquariums recently. Actually, I shouldn't even tell that story because it had nothing to do with the tank. It was the filter. But I had a friend message me earlier, a couple of weeks ago, saying that his entire tank got drained out by a filter. So if it goes bad, it goes bad fast. And, this whole thing could be over for you. So I can't put it at the bottom of my list, but I can't put it at the top either. I put it at number 3. The thing is, I'm sorry, real quick. The thing is, even most of the brands that are out there, like you're talking about, the Top Fins and the Aquions and stuff like that, are perfectly fine. You're not going to get me to call those junk. Half of the aquariums I own are from those brands. They're perfectly fine, and they are not overly expensive. So with that, I agree with you. You don't have to spend all the money on that. But just because it's so important, I put it a little higher on the list.
So I guess my question is, when we're talking about price point for aquariums, you've got the option to buy from big box, which is your Marine Lands, your Aquions, your Top Fins, or really after that, it's mostly custom made. My thought process was I would never have unless I needed an unusual size, I would never have a 125 custom made when I can go, literally, I have 4 125s right now. Not a single one cost me over $200. I bought them all new when they were on sale for I think it was like $199 for a 125. It was like some Christmas sale. I remember pulling up my truck, getting two, going home, going back, getting two more, and coming back. So there is no way. And even some of the pet stores that are around me, they have 125s that are like $800, 8 or 9 just for the tank alone. I'm like, there is 0% chance I'm spending that kind of money when I can go to PetSmart, get the same tank. I'm not talking about the stand for that tank, but I would. In fact, we had a situation where one of these tanks was scratched up pretty bad. I wound up fixing it by switching the back and the front and all this stuff. But I was thinking, wow, I might need to buy another 125. I went to one of the places that had, I would say, a more high-end 125. They wanted like $800 or $900 just for the tank. I went to PetSmart for the tank and the stand. It was like $500 or something. I was tempted just to go buy the combo, throw the stand right in the garbage, and then just grab the 125 because I've had good luck. So I could see if it was a special size. Your tanks, absolutely. If there was a Marine Land or Aquarium version of the thing you've got behind you, that's a lot of water pressure resting on those seams. I might go to the custom aquariums route, certainly for that, or a specialty size. But other than that, the standard sizes, no way.
I was having a conversation with a mutual friend of ours, Mark Beavers, who's one of the directors at Custom Aquariums, and I asked him, I might have even asked him on this podcast, does anybody ever buy custom tanks that are smaller than a 125? And he said, you'd be surprised how many 75 and 55 gallon tanks that they build. That the reason why they go custom is because they needed it that 1.5 inches smaller than, what the standard sizes are. So that surprised me that there is so many of those. But yeah, I mean, aquariums, they are the most important part of this as far as keeping the water all in there. But, I mean, again, I'm rethinking my ranking because you can buy them used too. I mean, I've got so many used tanks in here that have never had one leak or anything like that. But if it does go bad, it really ruins things. So I'm going to stand by it. I'm going to say, let's keep it at number 3 for me, but bottom of the list for you. That's perfectly acceptable. I'm not going to fight you on that. What do we go to
for me,
next?
it's like 4 or 5, somewhere in that 4 or 5 range.
Okay, so not at the bottom, but not...
No, because there's things you can go really, really cheap on with almost no problems whatsoever.
Well, if mine's at 3 and yours is at 4 or 5, then we're only one off. So yeah, we're good there. We're fine. Yeah. What would be next? I mean, do we go filter? Do we go lights? I didn't put lids because that's not
lids
really
are part of
worth
the tank.
About.
You're most likely getting the lids with the tank anyway, and half the people don't even run lids. I don't even have any lids on these tanks behind me anyway. So let's go filter. Let's do filter.
All right. Yeah. I'm going first because I don't want you to steal this from me.
I have a feeling we're going to completely agree on this one.
An aquarium filter, whether it is a sponge filter or a hang on the back or a canister or a sump, it doesn't matter what it is. The filter, in my opinion, is the lifeline of the aquarium. It's what not only keeps that water clean, but it keeps it moving for the fish, create that oxygenation process, keep the water healthy, keep it looking good. The filter is the life support system for an aquarium. And again, it doesn't matter what level of filter you're dealing with. So everything hinges. I'm sorry, Lucas Bretts. I love you.
I was just thinking, if he's watching this, I can see him typing away now, being like, $0, man.
I know.
$0.
I'm getting ready to see him in a couple of weeks, and he's going to be in fight mode. He's going to be fighting Joey Mullen. I don't want to be on Lucas's bad side right now, but in my opinion, the filter is what keeps everything alive. It is the life support system of an aquarium. And so for me, I'm putting all of my money into the filter. It's number 1 on the list for me, and I'll fight you over that.
No, you don't have to fight me because I guess we're a tag team then, because I 100% agree. Of all the equipment that you could buy, and yet you can do filterless tanks if you have them properly set up, lots of plants, very, very, very lightly stocked, things that almost nobody actually does when they're keeping fish, the vast majority of people. for that reason, it's everything. That filter goes down and you wind up with an ammonia spike, you've killed everything in your tank. If that filter goes down and you needed that filter to create surface agitation for oxygen, the oxygen concentrations, you've killed everything in that tank. Your microbes are dead, your fish are dead. So that is the absolute number one thing for me. Like you said, it's the heartbeat of your aquarium. I need it to move water. They're not complicated machines. I don't think you're ever going to see a groundbreaking new idea in filter design. I don't think that's ever going to happen because all these things are doing, it doesn't matter if it's a sump, it's a hang on back, it's whatever, it's just moving water. It's moving water across media to accomplish the nitrification process and to create surface agitation and oxygen and make sure that our oxygen concentrations are proper. But you get some cheap thing. You will never see me promote, buy, review an off-brand Amazon filter. I'm not doing it because I know right away that it's that piece of equipment is way too important to even bother wasting. So you hear John and I talk a lot about the Seachem Tidal line. The Aqua Clears have been around forever. Marineland Pros, even the Aqueon Quiet Flows, those top fins, those things I know they're not top of the line, but I also don't consider it to be like, oh, I skimped on the filter by running any of those, because generally speaking, they all have different features. They all have different advantages and disadvantages, but for the most part, those things just run. Will they get noisy sometimes for some of the lower end filters? Yeah, but those ones run. You're not going to see me going on Amazon and being like, hey, here's you just see the description: aquarium filter, aquarium fish tank filter for filter tank of 25 gallons or more filter tank filter. Yes. And you're like, what's the brand of this? You can't even read it. You're like, that was the most interesting brand name I've ever seen. I'm going to save $20 on a $50 filter. It's only going to cost me $30. No. For $20, I'm going to buy the Tidal, the Marineland Pro, the Aqua Clear, the Aqueon, whatever. Number one by far. If it's a canister, especially canister filters, be really careful with the canister filters, because those things can, like you just briefly mentioned, those will drain your tank if they start to have some issues. If they're leaking, you can flood your stuff real quick with an off-brand canister filter where you're like, I'll just put it in a Tupperware. It's got a small leak. And you realize, that turned into a much larger problem than I thought it was going to be. So, yeah.
Not only that, but also, the cheaper canisters that are made to be cheap and sell in high volume, they can clog up really fast. And a canister filter that is clogged up is useless. It's as useless as having no filter at all. So, this is somewhere where the money has to be spent on it. And there's quite a few things that we're going to talk about that you can skimp on, but not the filter. The filter is where the money has to go. And some of them, are downright shocking, but you know what? If we're talking about smaller aquariums, they're not shocking at all. But when you get into your 125s, 150s and up, you're going to spend big money on the filter, and you just need to go into it knowing that, because it is where you need to spend your money. More important than the aquarium itself, more important than the stand. I'd rather have a 125 with an FX6 on it sitting on the floor with no stand at all than have some cheap, ridiculous, like a Shamigo brand or something like that you've never heard of. That's insane. And you're making my argument for me when we have our argument about Amazon, by the way. But anyway, number one on the list, hands down. I'm glad we agree there. What would be next, lights or heater?
Let's go heater.
Okay. Well, this is another one for me.
Turn. It was my turn to rank it.
Oh, okay. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I thought we were taking turns, bro, because you're about to copy off of me.
That's fine. Go for it.
Heater's number 2. A heater fails, you're screwed. You're either baking all your fish and they're going to be dead within an hour, or the heater shuts off. And what really stinks about that is sometimes you don't realize it until a day or 2 or 3 later, and you're like, why aren't my fish eating? Why are they so lethargic? Why are they just sitting there? Why is all this fish food rotting at the bottom of my tank? And then worst part about it is some of these fish that are temperature sensitive, you bring the temperatures back up slowly over the course of a day, it's too late. It doesn't matter. They've already succumbed to the cold temperatures. They're just going to die anyway. And there's no way of turning that around. So for me, the filter, yeah, I'm spending all my money there. But if I have to heat the tanks individually, I'm going to spend the money and try to get a reliable heater that is not going to fry my fish or break down unbeknownst to me. And one more thing, if I've really got an important tank that has to be heated, I am not relying on that heater to give me the proper temperature. I am going with an external thermometer that will control when the heater turns on and off, because then you're not worried about the heater getting stuck on. It won't, because the external thermometer, when it says, okay, temperature of this tank is now 78, I cut the power to the heater. So if it's stuck on, who cares? It actually doesn't even matter, because then it just turns the power on. The heater's got to turn on anyway. So that becomes a non-issue, but I'm spending the money there. And the bigger the tank you have, the more expensive. You're keeping discus or something like that, get your nice heaters all run through an external thermometer. You're going to be in good shape.
The idea that somebody could go out and spend $600 on 3 pairs of breeder discus and then bring them home and put them into an aquarium that has a heater that they bought off Amazon for $9 is preposterous to me. But there's people that do it. I'm reminded of a story that a mutual friend of ours told me back in 2015. I'm not going to say his name here, and there's reasons for it. If you want to know when we're done recording, Jason, I will tell you who it was, because you might even know who it was. He might have told you the story too. This friend of ours had a very large aquarium in his basement that was in like a rec room where his family would gather, and his daughter was down there with a friend. She was having a sleepover, and it was real late, and he just heard, "Daddy, fire!" And he ran downstairs, and there was a fire around his fish tank, killed everything in the tank, and there were some very valuable fish in there. I can't say what they were, because then everybody would know who it is. And the fire had left the aquarium and was starting on the outside of the aquarium. This is a room with his daughter in it, and his daughter's friend. This could have been the most catastrophic of catastrophic stories. And it was, in fact, a bargain basement, cheap heater. There was a lawsuit involved. I mean, it was a whole big thing. This was a big, big deal. People almost lost their lives, not to mention thousands of dollars worth of fish. I could not agree with you more. And listen, an argument could be made that the heater could be number one, because there's so many things that can go wrong. Like you said, they can cook your fish because they got stuck on. They could break and not be heat anymore. If your if your filter fails, you're going to walk through the room and say, how come the water isn't moving? Why are the fish up at the top gasping for air? You're going to visually notice that the filter is down. But if the heater's down, yeah, the fish you might just be like, oh, they're not very active today. You know, you're not going to notice it as instantly as you would the heater. So an argument could be made that it's number one, but I agree with you. I put it at number two. There's just so many things that could go wrong. And I bet you there's more stories out there of heaters failing and wiping out an entire tank than there are filters. So, and it's not only, I don't know that I've ever heard a story of a filter burning a house down, but I bet you there's stories out there of heaters burning people's houses down. So yeah, you cannot go cheap here. If you go on Amazon, if you go on the devil and you order an $8 heater, you're taking a risk that I am not willing to take. That is just not, that's unacceptable. Heaters, you've got to put the money in it. I know it's tough, but that's where the money needs to go. Heater and filter.
Yep. And make sure they're UL listed. They've been tested. I agree with you. Heaters and filters are the two main important things. You could easily switch though. Do you have a favorite heater? Because we talked about the filter brands. We might as well bring that in too. So people are thinking, okay, well, if I'm not skipping, what is the heater that I am going to be buying that is going to probably, do you have a good experience with a certain heater? Again, we're not sponsored by anybody. We're just sharing opinions.
Well, I mean, I kind of am sponsored because I sell these heaters myself. They don't pay me any money for this, but I sell what I use, and I use the Seche heaters. I'm a firm believer in them. They've been making heaters. Everybody thinks of Seche as the people who make the pumps. They've been making heaters since 1975. I mean, they've been around forever. I am a believer in them. I've watched the videos. I haven't done it myself because I'm too scared, but I've watched the videos of people running over their heaters and the glass doesn't break. They're guaranteed for 5 years. And a reputable name like that to me is important. Yes, they cost way more than the $8 off-brand stuff on Amazon, but I am a firm believer in them, the presets and the contactless. And then if it's not Seche, I love the fluvels. I've always had really good luck with the fluvels, particularly the titanium fluvels. You want to talk about expensive, those are pretty up there. But I am a firm believer in putting money into the heaters, and Seche fluval. They're expensive, but they're worth it. What about you?
When I started the fish room, when I started with a lot of tanks and had to heat all those tanks on the other side, I used all the Eheim heaters, and they've always worked. I never had a single issue with any of those. I still have a bunch. If I've got an ick outbreak, there's on this side, there's 3 tanks that have heaters in them. All the old Eheims I've had now for probably over 10 years. And those things have always been really, really reliable for me. So, but yeah, I think all 3 of those suggestions are pretty darn solid.
Yeah, I love the Eheims. The Jaegers, going back to old school, I love those so much. So yeah, 100% agree there. And, we just named the 3 most expensive brands of heaters, but I think we've made the case that's where the money needs to go. So can't really argue with that. I guess next thing on the list is lights.
Yeah.
And it's my turn, isn't it?
It's your turn.
Lights are important depending on your situation. I've said this, I don't even know how many times. They're not important for the fish at all. Fish do not care about having the light on in their aquarium. If your aquarium is in your basement with no windows, so they're sitting in the pitch black dark all day, yeah, they're pretty important for that because the fish do want to see what's going on. But I would say even in a situation like that, the fish probably really don't care about how much light there is in an aquarium. However, there are things that do, like plants, if you're going to have live plants in there. So the lights can't be on the bottom of the list, depending on the situation. I do sell plants, so, lights are kind of important to my situation. Not all. I can't put plants in this tank back here. So for this tank back here, lights mean nothing. And they're really only on when I'm recording videos or doing live streams. So it's a weird thing because lights are not important, but they also are if you're keeping plants. So, but where I may argue with some people is that I don't think you need the most sophisticated, most expensive light, even if you are keeping plants, unless you're getting into some of the hardcore, super advanced plants that need the CO2 and they need the light and the extreme lighting. But most people aren't keeping those. They're not crazy enough to keep those kind of plants. Your regular plants, your crypts, your stem plants, your anubias, things, they're going to be fine with pretty much any light as long as there's light. So for me, I have lights at number 5, not at the bottom, but not nowhere nearly as important as the aquarium, the stand, the heater, and the filter.
So that's interesting you said that because you basically summarized a lot of what I was going to say. I have them, I'm looking at my list right now. I actually have them at number 6 if you don't have any plants. If you don't have plants, there's a lot of lights out there that will do an okay job. You've done videos on lights. I've done videos on lights where I organize them based on price point. And some of those lower end lights that you do get from Amazon, are they going to last forever? No, we're not talking about high quality right now. We're talking about, will this light illuminate a tank? Yes. And will it illuminate a tank for 2 or 3 years before it goes out? Probably. When it goes out, it's just going to look horrible. You can buy another $20 or $30 light for your 20-gallon aquarium. If you don't have any fish, I'm sorry, if you don't have any plants, you can skimp there. Don't make it unsafe. Make sure the UL listed. Don't just buy again, the 20-inch light for a 14-gallon aquarium slash fish tank, that kind of description on Amazon. You still want to buy a light that's got some brand recognition. But if you've got a planted tank, now I think it goes for me for number 6, maybe up to number 4 at least, because you want to have, it's got a decent spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
If you're running CO2 and super highlight plants, it might go as high as number 3 for me, but it doesn't go higher than 3.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't keep those advanced plants, and I'm not interested in keeping plants at that level. So the I would never have them that high, because we're talking about me here. But you're right. Yeah. If it is somebody that is, Jeff Miyake and keeping that super advanced stuff, then yeah, it can certainly be higher. And I wouldn't argue that it could go as high as 3. Nowhere near, I don't care what kind of plants you're keeping, nowhere near as important as the heater and the filter, but it is the lifeline for those plants. So, but 100% agree. I don't care if you're using a desk lamp. If all you have is fish in there, then who cares? The fish certainly don't care about the light. So you can cheap out there. It could be one of those things, like you said, you pay $20, it gets you through a couple of years, you save up, you get your Christmas bonus, and then you buy the expensive light when that one goes out on you. And it will go out. But then again, I've got lights in here that are 10 years old, and they were not expensive lights, and they still work. So you don't have to break the budget on that. And on the topic of lights, it reminds me, and I'm going to say it here live in front of the millions of people that are going to watch this live stream or this podcast. I have a light that I want to send you, my friend, because I'd like to get your opinion on it. It's a new light that I'm thinking about probably going to be bringing in to my inventory. I'm not going to say what it is. It's going to be a secret, but I want
special secret.
Yeah, I want to get your opinion on that light. But
cool.
Yeah, the lights are important, but something that you can definitely save money on. And then, the only other 2 things that we have on this list are fish and decorations. I think it's your turn. So let's see. What are we going to go? Fish?
Or do you want to go with decorations first and leave fish for the grand finale?
I think that makes sense. Let's go decorations.
Okay, let's go with the aquascaping stuff. Skimp, hardcore here. This is at the very bottom of my list, because you can find this stuff for free. River rocks, some of the driftwood is, you dry it out. Make sure that it's aquarium safe. I'm not just saying take any, look at that, somebody cut down a pine tree, I'm going to go ahead and chuck this log in my tank, and you're going to kill everything. But if you understand what types of rocks and wood can go in your aquarium, and which ones are safe, which ones are going to change water parameters, which ones are going to be a little bit more stable, you can get them for free. For us, a lot of the rocks that we got, even now the landscaping places are selling things like, say, Ryu stone, dragon stone, lots of different types of river rock. We would go to these landscaping places where at the aquarium stores, you might be paying $3-4 a pound. We were literally paying 15, 25 cents, 30 cents, 40 cents a pound on this stuff. Not necessarily, say, Ryu stone and dragon stone, but you can get it significantly less when you're at your landscaping places. So definitely consider that. If you're looking at driftwood, there are places to get it online. There are, for the most part, again, as long as it's been dried properly. If you want to boil the wood, if it's small enough to boil, do that to make it a little bit safer. But this is definitely an area. Even gravel substrate, you can get pool filter sand for pennies on the dollar. You can get small pebbles from your places like Menards and Lowe's and Home Depot. That is, I am not kidding you, it is the exact same stuff. The only difference, I've showed pictures side by side, is the packaging, and maybe, just maybe, the stuff that's made for the aquariums is a little bit more polished, but it is the exact same stuff, and you're getting it for pennies on the dollar. So here, this is one of the area where you can look for plenty of ways to save money. Because if you don't do that, you can easily spend more on aquascaping than you do on almost everything else that goes in or on your aquarium.
Yeah, I'm not going to try to be dramatic here. I agree 100%. It is, uh, it, you don't have to spend any money on your aquascape. And I'm going to take it a step further than you did. I have, who in the world would walk into somebody's living room that has let's just say 125 gallon tank that has nothing but water in it and the filter tubes and stuff sticking down and has two big Oscars in there? Who is going to look in that tank and go, that looks like crap, you should have decorations in there? No one, because they're going to be looking at the fish. The fish are the decorations. And even though I have my stack of rocks here and my yellow lab tank, I'm somebody that I like the fish to be the decorations. So it's not important at all to spend a bunch of money on it. And like you said, there are so many ways of saving money, even if it's, there's a pond near me that, it's a lake, I guess, because it's absolutely massive, that there's rocks all over the place over there that I could go and grab and, clean them up and then put them in. Those are free. Yeah, you got to make sure nobody sees you, but they're not going to cost you anything. You can absolutely skimp. And I don't think I would go digging up sand at the beach and putting that in my aquarium, but you can get super cheap play sand, pool filter sand. Pool filter sand is a lot easier to work with. The play sand is really dirty.
Yeah.
But yeah, you can absolutely skimp on it. And even if you do the ultimate skimp, which is do no decor at all, the fish are still going to look really cool. And unless you have fish like Mbunas, a lot of the Tanganyikan fish that do like to retreat and hide, if you're a betta keeper, they like to be able to feel safe and secure within their decor. Unless you're keeping fish like that, the fish don't really care. So, don't spend any money at all. The only money you're spending is water to put in the tank. Yeah, number 7 without any debate.
And for some of you, you're like, whoa, no way, man. That is my number 1, number 2, number 3. Well, I will stand pat and disagree about being in the top 2 because filters, heaters have to be 1. If you want to make it number 3, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, if you're watching on YouTube, you see the tanks behind me in the gallery, and they are fairly extensively scaped with wood and rocks and plants and substrate. And it did cost a lot of money, but that was a want, not a need for the most part. So what we're saying here is if we're looking at all of these relative to one another and where you have to spend the money, it doesn't have to be on the aquascape. You have far less, you can spend far less money there, i.e. almost free. Which brings
those,
go ahead.
Just one last thing on it. Those people that would make that argument, those people are more artists than they are fish keepers. And there's nothing wrong with that because I love looking at those aquascapes and they're beautiful and all that. But you're looking at it from the standpoint of being an artist and creating this beautiful piece of art. We're looking at it as just dumb fish keepers. So yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt you.
We got the fish. What say you?
You know what? This is one. I mean, I think both of us only have one place left on our list, so I think we're still in agreement here. I love all fish. I love fish that are the cheap. You can go and pick up a few of them for a couple dollars. I like the expensive fish. I like all of them. But if I'm on a budget, I would rather have a bunch of cheap fish in an aquarium that is set up properly and has the money spent on the right places than I would to have a knockoff cheap filter and a $8 heater, but then I put a couple of $400 discus in there. That's just backwards as far as I'm concerned. Fish to me are fish. As I'm sitting here looking off camera, I'm looking at Oscars, which are some of my favorite things in the world that I paid like $12 a piece for, that are magnificent. I'm looking at a school of rummy nose tetras that were like, $2 a piece. These are staples in our fish room. They make a huge statement. They're beautiful, some of my favorite fish ever, and we paid very little money for them. Back here behind me, there's some fish that were $60, $70 a piece, and they're magnificent, but they don't make the statement that some of the others do. There are so many absolutely stunning fish out there that are dirt cheap. You do not need to prioritize spending a bunch of money on fish. I have them number 6 on my list, but I have to put a caveat. Caveat or caveat? I don't know how to say that word. If you're somebody that's going for a very specific thing, you want to breed discus, we're not having the same conversation here. Okay. We can do a whole episode on that, setting up breeding and stuff. We should add that to the list, setting up a breeding setup. Then you're breeding discus for profit. You want to spend good money on that breeder pair. Okay. I get it. But that's not the conversation we're having here. We're setting up an aquarium in our living room. We have a limited budget. This is where we want to spend our money. I don't think you need to spend that money on the fish. You can pick them up on sale. You can go see you at Aquashella. You can go to one of the swaps that you're at and pick them up for pennies on the dollar. Don't spend money on fish. Number 6 on my list.
Yeah, I would say it just depends on where your light priority is, but I had it at 5 with the light 6, but you could easily move the lights up depending on what your situation is. I agree with you. The biggest thing when it comes to fish is not so much how much money you spend for the fish, it's what you do after you buy the fish, and that is quarantining your fish. So you should be doing that regardless of how much you've spent, where you've bought them from, how much confidence you have in the pet store or the person at the swap or wherever you got them from or online. You should be quarantining. So in terms of spending money, there are going to be certain pet stores where you're like, hey, if I go here, I'm more likely to get sick fish, but they're going to be cheaper. Well, I don't do that. I mean, I'm going to use some common sense, right? It doesn't do me any good to spend less money on a fish where there's a 50% chance they're going to wind up with ick, where if I go to a different pet store, I might be spending 20% more on the fish, but I'm probably not going to have to treat them. I'm still quarantining them either way. But I would prefer to go to the place where they might be more expensive, assuming that they are, but less problems later on in terms of being sick. But overall, this is not a place where you have to spend a ton of money. You can get guppies and platies and tetras and even some cory cats for little money, but do it right. Like you said, have the filters and the heaters in place that are going to last a long time and not cause your fish that you bought, regardless of the price, to become very sick.
You even talked about in a past episode, and I don't remember if it was swordtails or platies that you said, but one of your dream tanks that you'd love to set up is a big tank full of one of those
platies.
live bears,
Yeah.
platies. And it's like, I wish you would do that. I think it'd be so cool to do that.
Yeah.
But that's a great example there. You're talking about setting up a relatively expensive aquarium and putting a bunch of cheap fish in there. And I've got a tank full of yellow labs. They're not, I wouldn't put them in the category as cheap, but you can go anywhere and buy labs, $7, $8 a piece. I mean, you can make a huge statement with those cheap fish. To me, fish are fish. I love them all. Sure, I love some of them more than others, but I think they're all awesome. And, the more important thing to me is keeping them alive and keeping them healthy. And the other things on this list, with the exception of decorations, are more important to keeping them alive than, how much you paid for the fish. So, right. To recap, did you write your list down? Like, are you able to recap your list?
As we were talking, I finally wrote it down because I'm like, oh, here's the 7 things. What is my order? Because you didn't give me the 7 things until about 4 minutes before we turned the camera on. In my defense, he's like, oh, by the way, we're going to have 7 categories. I'm like, okay, well, what are they? He's like, these are it. I'm like, all right, let's go.
Shows how professional of a co-host
That's how we operate.
There.
It's okay because he doesn't know what I'm even going to be talking about until the day before we do it. So
this is true. I actually had to ask you before we started recording, what 2 episodes
what
are you
doing
today?
Tomorrow? Here.
So recap your list then. Go through yours and then I'll go through mine.
All right. So number 1 is filters. 2 is heaters. I'm actually going to go number 3 is the stand. Just because while there's ways to skimp, if you're not capable of skimping, I don't want my fish tank on the floor. I'm going to go number 4 is the tank. I'm up in the air with the fish and lights. They're 5, 6, right? So it just depends on, and again, the lights could go all the way to number 3, in my opinion, if you've got really high light plants. But the last thing is going to be the scaping supplies. That's going to be 7 for me. So that's how I got it.
When I told Lisa, uh, what was it, like 6 months ago now, I guess, that I'm considering bringing in a co-host for this podcast, and she's like, "Do I even need to ask who you're going to ask?" I said, "No, of course I'm going to ask Jason." This is why, because you and I are so similar. We think a lot alike on these things, and you know what? Podcast may be a little better if we disagree on everything.
Well,
I
we're
don't
going
know.
to. That's coming, folks.
Yeah, that's true.
The Amazon
It is.
debate is going to be happening here very soon, and we'll have some.
We've been hyping this up for we need to be red in the face. I'm going to go take extra blood pressure medication. We need to not let people down with this debate that we're going to have on Amazon here.
When you edit it, just turn up the saturation really high. It'll both look like we're beat red. He got so angry, he's purple.
Yeah,
he got purple angry.
It's the kind of thing I'm very passionate about that topic, but I can't get angry at you. You'd have to hurt my family or threaten me or something before I'd get mad at you. But we're going to have a nice heated debate about that. But the fact is, you and I say a lot of, I agree with you 100%, blah, 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 because we do see eye to eye on so many things. And this list is no different. You kind of started to switch things around a little bit, which almost made our lists identical. Filter is number 1 for me as well. Heater number 2. Then I went with the aquarium number 3, stand number 4. Those can be swapped out, and you made a good argument for putting those lower on the list. Lights 5 for me, fish 6, and decorations 7. Is there anything that we neglected? I mean, I don't.
That's what I was trying to think about of those 7 as you were talking. I'm like, I mean, there's like the water changing equipment. So maintenance equipment. That's not one I would. Now I don't know where that fits in here, but I can tell you this: in terms of like water changing equipment, Python type hoses and all that kind of stuff. I guess a good one. I found them all to be mostly similar. Like the Aquarium one, I used that for a long time. I use a Python brand for a long time. So I think there's a price difference. It's not that big of a deal. But would I buy an off-brand water change thing? Probably not, because they start leaking everywhere. The hoses get holes. I actually DIY'd my own. But like things like algae scrapers and stuff, that's not high cost, but I tend not to skimp there, because you buy cheap algae scrapers, you're scraping up your glass. You buy cheap water siphons, they start not working, not suctioning properly, cracking. So I would actually spend more money there than certainly on the aquascaping. I don't know if it would take a higher priority than lights and fish, but if there was 8 categories, I might place that right above the scaping stuff.
Yeah, I mean, the cheap little algae scrapers and stuff like that, when you buy super cheap ones and you try to be funny in a video and break it over your knee, you have to be careful, because it might fly up and hit your friend in the face and send him to the emergency room. That's a true story. That happened with Jay Wilson. Right here, that happened. And so anyway, but the water changing system, I could not agree more. In fact, I wish I had put that on that list, because if we said, okay, we're going to redo our list and we're going to have water changing system on there, I would probably put it at number 3. I'm not going to lie to you, because I think that the worst thing in this hobby is lugging buckets around and dragging trash cans around and running, it's all, forget all of that. Hooking up one hose to your sink and not getting water all over the floor. And it's absolute game changer in this hobby. I've said it before. I think the Python system is one of the best inventions to ever happen to this hobby. I think I would probably put it at number 3 on my list. It's no brainer.
Yeah. I mean, if you're talking about optimizing and spending the money to optimize your fish tank maintenance, and yeah, I think it does. It goes way higher on the list. I was thinking more like comparing different off-brand water changing equipment to one another. But if you're just talking about, hey, get away from dipping a bucket in or cups in a tank and pouring it in a bucket. Oh, for sure. That's number 3 for me. Then for sure, because the worst, I know there are people out there who say they enjoy fish tank maintenance. I don't understand it. I never will. I despise fish tank maintenance. I'm just going to be really honest. Well, first of all, I don't do it anymore. I have my boys. I've said this a million times. They maintain the tanks, but if and when I do, I hate it. I hate every possible moment of it. I hate scraping glass. I hate changing out filter media. I hate cleaning sponge filters. I hate getting duckweed out of the tank. If there's anything to do with maintenance, I hate it. So at some point, I'm going to have to do it again because my boys are now men and they're getting older. And so they'll eventually move out. And when that happens, I will put in auto water change for the one side and maybe even for this side, and then just have to worry about algae and like some duckweed or maybe some substrate touch-ups. But whatever you can do to make it easier, like you said, make it easier.
I don't hate it. I don't hate aquarium maintenance. I'm like you. My daughter is doing these tanks now for me. It's beautiful. Nice. And they've never looked better. So, but I don't hate maintenance because of the Python and because of the different systems and stuff that I've put in place. If I had to do water changes in a 360 and 240s, and I was doing all of that out of buckets and trash cans, I'd be absolutely miserable. So the reason why I don't hate it is because I spent $100 on I think they're 50-foot Pythons, about two of them, clean water and dirty water. I've got 2 sinks, so one's hooked up to each one. Best money I've ever spent. And it actually makes the process enjoyable. So I don't hate it because of that. And when you don't hate it, you do it more. And so, I think it is something. And as far as the different brands, I'm going to say it. I haven't found anything to compare to Python. Do the others work? Yeah, sure. They work. I've only had one water changing system break, and it was not a Python. I don't like disparaging companies unless they're cheap knockoffs on Amazon. So I'm not going to say what brand it was. There's only a few of them out there.
Right.
I've only had one mishap with a Python, and that was one that was like 10 years old, and the pipe burst because I left it closed too long, and the water was on full pressure, and it burst. But 10 years use out of it, I'd say it ran its course. And really all I had to do was snip that part off and put a new piece on, and it was good. But it did get some water on the floor. But I think Python is without a doubt the best of the water changing systems.
It's
also the most
their hose is the best too by far, because I don't, like I said, I made my own attachment to the sink that's a Python like thing. Way more heavy duty than anything you could buy, including Python. But the hose itself, I always go and get the Python hose because it's got that, it's soft and flexible, where if you get the other brands that are a little bit less, trust me, those hoses don't last as long. Like the Python branded hose that they use is outstanding, and it's bendable. It's not super hard. It doesn't get as brittle as easily. It's still going to get, you go 10 years, like you said, and it just does. That's water, and that is plastic. It's going to get brittle over time, but not anywhere close to some of the other lesser brands. So the Python actual hose stuff, 100% always.
The other brand that I had that did break, I was screwing it onto the faucet, and the nut that you screw on, the plastic nut, broke in my hand. Yeah, it's like I'm not Arnold Schwarzenegger, with all that strength. I'm just a regular guy, and it broke in my hand, and that was not after 10 years of use. It was after maybe 6 or 8 months worth of use. And when that thing's broken, it's trash. There's nothing you can do with it.
Oh yeah.
And that's the other thing I really like about the Python, is that you can order every single little part off of their website. The little washers, the adapters, everything is all there. I am not affiliated with Python. In fact, I've never even received a discount on a single product of Python. I just think that they're the best in the business. And if you're going to buy a water changing system, put your money in and get the Python. Wait for them to go on sale or something. It's worth the money.
Totally agree.
Yep. So that was fun. And we did an hour on that. That's surprising. And it surprises me how similar our lists were. I knew they were going to be similar. I didn't realize they were almost going to be point for point exactly the same. But, that's why we work well together, because we think alike. So, but this was a lot of fun to do. Did you have anything else you wanted to say before I say goodbye to these fine people?
I think we covered most of the important stuff.
Cool. Well, hey, listen, I hope you all had as much fun as we did. This was a good time. Be smart with your money. Buy the things. Put your money into the things that we had our high on our list. We've been doing this long enough to know that that's where your money should be spent. I hope you enjoyed listening to our banter about it. It sure was fun to do, and we will be back next week. Next week is not going to be the World Championship match. That's 2 weeks from now. And the reason why we're doing it that way is because I just did a video about Amazon, and we didn't want them to be too close. So be looking forward to that. The gloves are coming off. I'm going to have walk-up music. I'm going to be wearing the robe with my hoodie down. It's on for that episode. But until then, we will look forward to seeing your comments down below if you're watching this on YouTube. If you're listening to it in audio form, well, I'm sorry. You got to go to the YouTube channel and put your comment down in there, except Spotify is going to be adding comments here soon. We'll see how that goes. But anyway, why am I rambling so much? Thank you all so much for listening, and we look forward to seeing you again next week.
Bye-bye, everybody.